City of Salem, City Council Committee on Administration and Finance, co-posted with the Committee of the Whole, met in the Council Chamber on Wednesday, May 29th, 2024 at 6 p.m. for the purpose of discussing the fiscal year 2025 operating budgets and capital improvement plans for the electrical department, public property, building, gas, and plumbing, Board of Appeals, fixed costs, and traffic and parking. Let's see. Notice of this meeting was posted on May 22nd, 2024 at 3:58 p.m. and this meeting is being recorded. Joining us tonight from the Administration Finance Committee, we have Councilor Stott, Councilor Jurislow, Councilor Prosnewski. Absent is Councilor Varela. And also joining us from Committee of the Whole, we have Councilors Masilla, Councilor Harvey, Councilor Cohen, Councilor Hapworth, and Councilor Watson-Felt. And we also have joining us tonight, we have quite a crowd. We have our city electrician, John Giardi. We have our building commissioner, Rula Orfanos. We have Dave Kacharski, our director of traffic and parking. We also have our deputy finance director, Justin McCutcheon. And we have Anna Friedman, our finance director, and chief of staff, Lisa Peterson, and we have Mayor Pangallo. And welcome, everyone. As I've said at the beginning of each of our budget hearing meetings, these are public meetings, and they are for the financial review of best practice and to learn about the departments and how they utilize funds. And we also want to be mindful that all departments are available anytime for additional follow-up. To view the full budget, please go to salemma.gov/FY25. And the homepage also includes, towards the bottom of the mayor's statement, a link to the budget in brief, which is a really helpful summary. And when you come up to present, please tell us about what your department does, anything you'd like to highlight, any significant changes in your budget, and capital projects you'd like to discuss. I'd also like to mention that the capital improvement plans are in the larger tabbed sections in the front, section 7, and I will be referencing the page in that section for the 5-year capital plan. And first we have, for inspectional services, we have electrical with John Giardi. And that starts on section 17, and the budget summary is on page 483.
Thank you, councilors, for having me. It's been a privilege to work for the city of Salem as long as I have, and I appreciate your confidence. In regards to what we do, we basically take care of all the inspectional part of the electrical business. We install traffic lights, maintain the traffic lights. We maintain the roadway luminaires, and we also maintain the fire alarm system for the city. In regards to projects, we've been working on North Street, upgrading some of the LED luminaires. We've upgraded Jefferson Avenue completely with LED luminaires, and we'll be working on other streets as well. Our intent is to go up North Street and add some more luminaires to that street. And Boston Street 107 will be doing that. We've also worked with the police department in numerous locations in regards to installing camera systems, surveillance, and the police and us have been working well together, so that's working out really well. And we've worked at the Salem Willows, trying to get some of those light fixtures repaired so that we have a full and pleasant summer, evenings at the Willows. We will be working at Leslie Retreat Park at some point. We're due to upgrade all the luminaires at that park. they're starting to fade. They're over 10 years old, so we need to upgrade those. That's part of our capital improvement project. There's $25,000 in that line for that. And we're also going to be upgrading some of our LED traffic signals in regards to different locations, what we want to do. One intersection I'd love to start with would be Jefferson Avenue at Jackson Street. I'm not Jefferson Avenue, it's Jackson Street and Highland Avenue. That signal needs an upgrade. The control cabinet is just about at the end of its life, and we're working to rectify that situation. That's somewhat most of what we do, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If you want me to go into the capital improvement side now, I can, but that's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Giardi. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about your overall budget and then have that vote, and then we can flip to the capital improvement plan. Do any of the councilors have any questions? Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Hi, John. I appreciate that you and I are basically on speed dial for the lights, and I appreciate your service that you provide and always quick to answer and meet me to go over the issues. I just had a question on the Leslie's Park note that you made about the luminarias being, or the LEDs being replaced. I know that there was a lot of issue with the underground wiring and water. Has that been resolved, or is that going to be?
We have been pretty much on top of that. Mm-hmm. What was happening with that was we were at 240 volt system. I'm sorry, 120, 208, and we've upgraded that, so we don't have that problem anymore. The wiring has been replaced, so we're in pretty good shape that way.
Okay.
Just the luminaires that have to be replaced because they're fading.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just one more note, if I may. I know there are no names in our budget book, but I noticed 6 June 1984 was someone's hire date. So I would just like to say happy 40 years with the city.
All right.
That is quite, right?
That was nice. Thank you, everybody. Wow, all right. I wasn't expecting that one. Good. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, like I said. In regards to the budget, before you start trying to pull it apart and take my money away, right? Like all good finance committees do. Right. And I need every nickel that I have. Okay. I fought hard for what's in this budget, and I'm looking to get another man, personnel body-wise. I've been short for 2 years in a row in regards to health issues, and I'm going to be short again come June 7th. Mark Rochon, who's my wire inspector, one of them is going out for a hip operation. Now, he's going to be out like 8 more weeks, so that leaves me short-handed again. So I ask that you keep this personnel budget intact so that we can advertise for a journeyman electrician, which his duties will be to work with the electrical department and inspectional and as far as working out in the street. So we'll have a multitask on that, so. And the rest of the line items speak well for themselves because like inflation is killing us. You know that, everybody knows that. So one pole used to cost us like $2,000, $1,500 to $2,000. Now it costs $4,500 for one decorative pole, one of those black light poles. That's ridiculous how much things cost. So I just ask you to consider that when you're looking at this overall expenditure side.
Yes, thank you, and we appreciate you and how it's busy on a good day when you're fully staffed. So we appreciate the amount of the volume of work that you do. Councillor Cohen was next, I believe.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Not being a member of the committee, through you to Mr. Giardi. I think 1984 was when they started keeping records, so don't know exactly when we started. A couple of things. Not having Mark Racone on the job is a big loss because I think he's known as one of the best wire inspectors in the state.
He's a good inspector. Yeah.
He's amazing. And, I wish you the best on the staffing, because I know it's been a challenge, and you had a death, sudden death a couple of years ago. I just want to say two things, and that's basically that of all, and I said this to you before the meeting, of all the people that I deal with in the city, you are the most responsive. And you get to the job pretty quickly, and you always have an answer. And I want to give the public a really good example. At the corner of Lafayette and Porter Street, there's a signal, and there's a blind person who lives on Porter Street, and I'm ignorant about this, but I thought the signal was working because I could see the countdown. But these signals, for people who don't know, are audio, and he couldn't hear the signal crossing the street, and John's been up there a couple of times, so I just want to thank you, because that's a really good example of doing right by the residents.
Thank you, Councilor.
Next was Councilor Masillo.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to jump in and say a couple of things. I appreciate you calling out the highest quality customer constituent services and responsiveness, because it means that you understand that you do customer service, and that's really important. The second thing is, thank you for your work on Jefferson Ave. It's made a huge difference, the upgraded lights there. I've heard feedback from people that live there that it has made a big difference. So thank you, and thanks for shuffling things around to get that done. I would love to increase your budget so that you have an inventory of items. And I think one of the worst things is when something is taken out by an accident, right, through a traffic accident, and it's not replaced for up to a year because we're waiting for insurance, we're waiting for parts, and it's things like, the pedestrian cross signals. It's crazy that in situations we don't even have enough of those throughout the city, and then to have one taken out at a vital intersection or, midway through a street, it's tough. And I hope that the mayor will make note of that and allow you to have some sort of inventory.
To be fair to the mayor, okay, and fair to you.
We could try to be fair, yeah.
Councilor, we've talked about that, the mayor and myself, and the biggest problem that we have is find a place for storage. And we've been trying to find a site where we can get some of those storage trailers that we could put on a site so that we could store some lampposts and some signal fixes themselves. I haven't been able to find a site yet, so if anybody knows of any place or where we can put things, I'd really appreciate it. And the mayor's on board with it, so.
Is there a way to get word out in the city to see if somebody has land that they would lease for a small amount of money? I think it's really important that we have that inventory. And so if that's what's holding it up, maybe there's some sort of a solution, like on Robinson Road or something.
Well, I've talked to Mr. Jordan about that, and he's looking. He's trying to find us a place too, so.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. John, I'm not going to try to take any of your nickels here. Just curious about this line item for maintenance and traffic signals and police details. We're both under by 7,000 on the traffic signals for what you requested versus what you got, and 4,000 for police details. Is that one specific project that you weren't able to do, or is there more detail on that?
I'm sorry,
Sorry, it's on page 485, maintenance and traffic signals. You asked for 42,225 and you got 35,000. And then right below that, police detail asked for 8,000, you got 4,000.
Yeah, well, it means we didn't not get anything done. It's just that we couldn't do any more projects, Ty, Councilor.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing that happened there. I mean, we requested more money, but I understand that, you need to make cuts somewhere. So they're doing their job as best they can. I'm doing my job as best as I can.
Okay. It looked like the cost of one of those decorative light fixtures, so I wasn't sure if it was one project that you weren't able to do, or if it was if it's just a cut that
We can live with it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councilor.
Yes, Mayor Pangallo.
Yeah, I think Mr. Giardi's budget. We tried to be, all departments, we had to go back and make reductions, unfortunately, this year in light of the budget gap that we needed to solve for. And we tried to do our best to sort of, just cut a little bit here and there within hopefully providing for Mr. Giardi what the things that he most needed and continuing to keep an eye on it as the year progresses. But that was what we had to do in order to get the budget in balance.
Great. Any more questions on the budget before we go on to the vote, and then we'll go on to the capital improvement plan? Yeah. Okay, so the budget summary is on page 483. Councillor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval for the electrical budget personnel of $471,041, electrical expenditures of $468,615 for a department total of $939,656.
Second.
Thank you. Councillor Stott moves to recommend approval of the personal budget for electrical in the amount of $471,041 and the expenditures budget in the amount of $468,615 for a department total of $939,656. All in favor? Let the record show, I see three hands plus my own, so the matter carries 4-0. 4-0. And thank you, Mr. Girardi. Yes.
To everybody.
Okay, so next, the capital improvement plan, plan, again, that is section 7 towards the front, and it is page 256. Great. So are there anything particular that you'd like to go over or talk about or tell us about?
Yes. I definitely need the line for the aerial truck at $175,000. It was supposed to be built, but the problem is the manufacturer is having problems, with supply and demand. So unfortunately, the cost might be a little more by the time we get it built. I'm just, trying to prepare everybody for that. We may have to go to a different company to get a different truck, but we can't afford to lose the options on the truck because they're important. Most of them are safety options, so. And utility pole replacement, there's only like $25,000 in that line. I haven't been able to get to that work, as far as replacing any poles because of the fact it's short of manpower. So, but we will need that. And the painting of the decorative lights, I think we're looking at a capital improvement project that's greater than $25,000. It's going to have to be spread out over some years because for $25,000, I'm lucky if I can go halfway down one street. That's how much it costs today. It's unbelievable. So that will have to be readjusted. Outside of that, I'm done. I mean, there's line expenditures there for the smart signal upgrades. We're still in the process of doing that. We're in phase 2. The money hasn't been expended yet because we're not finished with smart signal phase 2 up on North Street. So when we finish that, those lines will be encumbered. I don't expect that to happen probably for within a month or 2 months, by the time we're complete. And let's see. Raleigh Plaza lighting, okay. That was all set. And LED upgrades, I mentioned that before, so we'll be trying to upgrade some of the street lights. That money is used for that, for the LED street lights, so. That's it.
Great, thank you. Councilor Prosnewski?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. John, I just want to thank you for everything you do and echo some of Councilor Cohen's comments too. Outstanding job for 40 years. Absolutely, truly outstanding. And the ups and downs, the roller coaster rides, all the different administrations, somehow you've been able to pull it together every year. So thank you. Thank you for your 40 years. I hope you hang around for a little while longer too. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Counselor.
Yes, I echo that as well. Councilor Rosillo, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just go back? I'm a little confused on the, okay.
So just to clarify, since Mr. Giardi is very thorough, he's actually reporting on the status of several open capital plans as well from prior years and the status of how the spending is on those and that those are also still needed. So the ones that he's reporting on are items that are open, I believe, and then the brand new ones for FY25 are those three that are noted in the budget book for the ADA walk signals, which is an annual allocation of $10,000 a year, and then Smart Signal Project Phase 3 for $100,000, and then $60,000 for the traffic light infrastructure improvements and updates. So those are the new ones, and then the ones that Mr. Giardi was walking through are sort of statuses on open projects.
So can I just ask one question? The ADA walk signal buttons, how many do you get for $10,000 a year?
Ooh, okay, they used to cost $300. Now they're double, $600. $600 a button.
Wow.
Wow, the increases are scary.
It's awful.
They are. Yeah, it's daunting. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Just to follow up on that specific question, do we install them ourselves? Okay. I had a question on, well, actually kind of one comment. That was actually really helpful to hear the open capital items that you had as well. And I don't know, I would love to see that like full picture of what is currently open and hasn't been spent yet or what was being worked on. I don't know, just comment. I know, give me all the data. A question on the smart signals, which I'm very familiar with. It says phase 3. How many phases are you expecting, or is phase
3 is,
that's it?
that'll be going down the corner of New Derby and Congress up to Hawthorne Boulevard.
Okay, so we're not expecting to implement them on it like the Boston Street corridor, which I guess there aren't that many signals on there, or in any other.
The Boston Street corridor, I think Mass Highway will be addressing.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on the capital improvement plan? Okay, well, I echo what everyone says. Thank you very much for all you do, your many years of service.
I appreciate all you councilors because I know what it is.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anna. Thank you.
So next we are moving on to public property inspections with Ms. Orvanos, and it is section 15, and we are starting with the building, plumbing, gas inspectors budget summary, and the budget summary will be page 458, and again, that's section 15. Welcome, Ms. Orvanos.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here. It's my first time presenting. I am the Director of Public Property and the Building Commissioner. We have some new staff changes, and we have our staff, so what we're about is building permits, inspectional services. So we have 5 inspectors right now. We have 3 building inspectors. I do have a new staff member, a new building inspector on, which is greatly appreciated and will assist with a lot of the projects that we have going on in the city. I have a plumbing inspector, and we have our weights and measures. Actually, who just retired, John Doyle, but transitioned in a new inspector, Leonard Rose, who's wonderful and does 2 other communities and very knowledgeable. So we are fully staffed right now, which is a great asset, as I said, because we do building permits, we do violations, we do annual inspections, much of a lot of the stuff that we do. We issue permits, we do multifamily inspections, we assist other departments, fire, health, building, on annual inspections, on required inspections, on any kind of inspection. We work very well with all our other departments. We're responsible also for enforcing city ordinances, building state codes, and also any repairs and maintenance in our city-owned buildings. And then, let's see. Right now, some of the goals that we have achieved, we relocated sustainability in the annex building. We're trying to relocate maybe the health department. Their department has been growing, and we're trying to reach another department area for IT, hopefully within our city buildings. Other things that we achieved, we have a new fire alarm system here at City Hall, which is a safety that we've been trying to get, so that was implemented in FY24. We have put on some new pass cards, safety for IDs, and to get into the buildings here at the annex in the City Hall buildings. We're working on to get them at the CLC Center, also in the library. We have also, right now, put in some cameras that will be hopefully fully functioning within the next 2 weeks. That's been a little ongoing project. We're trying to get those implemented also at the Senior Center and the library. And hopefully, we talked earlier with the mayor about getting some panic buttons that we have also here at this building and the annex building, also at DPW and Green Lawn Cemetery. So we're well-rounded and we do a lot of things. Hopefully I've touched a little bit on that, what I wanted to touch on.
Thank you. I appreciate your focus on, on safety. Yes. And also, I'm happy to hear you're fully staffed. And just a quick question, is that why the contracted services are lowered? The amount? We're just curious.
On our contracted services?
It does. Yeah, the request is lower than the previous year. That's let me see. Anyway, yes, Mayor Pangallo.
Specifically, that is that had been the Hamari contract for short-term rental monitoring, which we no longer have. So that was that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee, through you to the building commissioner. I got 3 things. It seems kind of dry and cool tonight, but it was pretty hot last night. So I know you have a new facilities director coming on, and I'm excited that someday we'll have heat pumps in this building. Okay. That was rhetorical, but hopefully. I do want to say that you have Gail Kubik coming on in a few months, and when I was chair of the Sustainability, Energy, and Resources Committee, I worked with her for over 7 years, and she's one of the brightest human beings on earth. She's a resiliency architect. She's really great, and I'm really excited that you're going to have that person with that kind of experience working in the department.
Actually, Gail has started with us about 4 weeks now.
Oh.
And she's wonderful. I have to say, she's an architect, and it's a wonderful asset to our department. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's actually worked on some of the bigger projects in the state, like Situate. They don't have a planning department, believe it or not, and they're probably the most vulnerable community in the state, and she helped with their resiliency plans. You might be surprised, but I'm going to ask you about some codes.
Okay.
Yeah, so effective July 1st are the enhancements to the stretch code.
Yes, the opt-in.
Yeah, and that includes like HERS ratings and things like that, and also the specialized code that we adopted in January. And that's only 33 days from today.
Yes, and people are flying in with their permits.
They are. So it's my belief that the specialized code is easier because it's 4 things. It's only new construction, but the HERS rating is a rather complicated thing. So I'm assuming you're working with Mr. Duffy, and I just want to have a comfort level that you guys will be ready to enforce any project that hasn't been fully permitted before July 1st with those codes.
Yes, definitely. And we work very well with Neil Duffy and sustainability. Yep, we're definitely ready.
Thank you.
And I just want to touch on the AC. Normally, we'd have them installed. I have a company coming to clean the windows next Friday that couldn't come any sooner. That's the only reason.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the ACs that we have are literally the size that you would have a small bedroom, and they make a lot of noise in this room, and I do believe that a little bit of investment in some heat pumps with the new incentives would make this a more comfortable space.
Definitely, we'll have to have our new facilities director work with Neil in sustainability to achieve that goal.
Any other questions from the council? Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I just want to say welcome. Great job. I agree about the window ACs. I actually dread them going in because then I can't hear anything in here. So ditto to what Councilor Cohen said. I wanted to say thank you for the smooth transition that you provided. Anecdotally, I've only heard positive feedback and efficiency that is going on in the office. I wanted to just point out that I really enjoy the goal noted, or appreciate the goal noted, to provide more responsive services by developing a more streamlined permitting process. That's another piece of feedback that I've gotten that I think, not on you, but it's a very clunky permitting process. So I appreciate that that's acknowledged and being looked at. Yeah.
We're always trying to work with IT to streamline it and see how we can make it a little more user-friendly, because it's hard enough to go online and do a permit, and then when there's a lot of little cliches, as you want to say, that don't work, and then get the permit flowing, that's not a good thing.
Great. So it's great to see. And did you say the facilities director, I don't want to jinx anything, but has been hired? Do you have?
We're working on it.
Okay.
Councilor Prosnewski?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Thank you, Vula, for all you're doing. Seems to be running smooth, very smooth running machine you have going over there, which is great. It's kind of a little bit of an off-the-wall question, but I know that we've been talking about ADUs for the last few years, and how many, I'm just curious, if you know off the top of your head or a round number, in the last year, how many have we permitted, how many have we built? Have you got any idea? I couldn't find anything in the notes.
Guessing, maybe 20 accessory dwelling units. How many? Council Cohen knows more than I do. 8 only? Oh no, we've permitted a few more, or coming in actually. Maybe they're working on it, that's why. We have a few more coming in this year, so maybe they're not permit issued because.
So 20 that are either built or being permitted to be built for a total. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great to hear the number is up. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, Councilor Mazzillo?
I just want to add, it's great to see a woman in your job. Just going to put it there.
Thank you.
Agreed. Councilor Harvey?
Thank you. From you to Vula. One question is, you mentioned panic buttons.
Yes.
I know at the Council of Aging, they were they were looking into getting a panic button there too. Is that on the list?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Definitely, yep. And I want to thank the council for helping us forward the funds for that, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to the budget summary vote on page 458 before we move on to capital improvement plan. Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I would like to recommend approval of the building, plumbing, gas inspector budget personnel line of $770,000, $770,404, an expenditure line of $49,242 for a total department total of $819,646.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the personnel budget for $770,404 and also the expenditures budget in the amount of $49,242 for a department total of $819,646. Seconded by Councilor Prosnewski. All in favor? Let the records show that I see 3 hands plus my own, so this matter carries 4-0. Okay, and the capital improvement plan for this department back in section 7, page 256. I'm sorry? Then I was going to go back to fixed costs and Board of Appeals, but you'd like us to do that first? Okay. Okay, so I figure while we're in the discussion of the budgets and what the department's doing, we'll go on to that, so. Okay, and it is at the top.
On the, for the Properties Building Department, a couple capital items, and Ms. Orpanos can provide more detail on these, but for FY25, there have been the allocation each year. I think this mic might be dying. And so the proposal is to continue those annual allocations both for ADA compliance and associated improvements. And so the proposal is $30,000 for FY25, and then also an annual allocation for priority small repairs, upgrades, furnishings, associated improvements, and that request for FY25 is $50,000. And then for additional information, Vula may have additional information about sort of the plans for that spending for next year.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? No? Okay, great. So we will go back to section 15 to public property fixed costs on page 462. And these fixed costs ensure that city facilities are adequately maintained, such as City Hall, the Annex, Council on Aging, and this section only has expenditures. So again, section 15, page 462. Any questions on these from the council? Councilor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Through you to the commissioner and the mayor and anyone else who's listening. I can't wait to see this with no oil on it sometime in the future.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I move to recommend approval for the public property fixed cost expenditures line item of $730,950.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Stott moves to recommend approval of the fixed cost expenditures for a total of $730,950. Seconded by Councilor Prosnewski. All in favor? Let the record show, I see 3 hands plus my own, so this matter carries 4-0. And next we have the Zoning Board of Appeals, and this also has expenditures only, and it is on page 466 with the budget summary on 468.
So did you want me to speak on that? Sorry. No changes. Down the road, I would like to talk a little bit about getting a little assistance with the zoning part of it. We do have a lot of inquiries. It takes a lot of time with zoning just to look up something when a permit comes in, just to make sure zoning-wise they can do something, they can build it. In future, we'll talk with the mayor and the council also to have someone to assist us in the department with that.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? No, Councilor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I move that we recommend approval for the Zoning Board of Appeals expenditures line of $1,200.
Second.
Thank you. Councilor Stark moves to recommend approval of the Zoning Board of Appeals expenditures in the amount of $1,200, seconded by Councilor Prosnewski. All in favor? So let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own. This matter carries 4-0. Great. Okay, and again, thank you, Ms. Urbanos. It's been great to have you. Like the other counselor said, you're incredibly responsive, and we appreciate you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. We have great teamwork here with the city council and all the departments. Thank you for your time.
And next, we move on to Section 8. And this is our traffic and parking department. And interesting note that it is in the process of becoming known as the Department of Transportation, which I find a great step in better defining all the work that you do, which includes bikes and walking paths. And I believe something will be coming into the council. So I'm excited to hear about that. Again, this is Section 8. And will be the budget summary will be on 381. And thank you, Mr. Kucharski.
Thank you, Council. Good evening. Thank you for having me. David Kucharski, Traffic and Parking Director. The department is made up of 22 individuals, including myself. The majority of the staff is usually dedicated to day-to-day parking operations. We have an assistant parking director, several garage supervisors, as well as maintenance, security, and enforcement personnel. Outside that, we have 3 individuals, including one of them, 3 plus myself, not only focused on parking, planning, policy, and programs, but also heavily focused on transportation projects and programs. We oversee the neighborhood traffic calming program, where we work to implement lower cost projects using speed humps, paint and post projects, to try out to improve safety and accessibility for all users. We also oversee the Salem Skipper program, which has been in existence since December 2020. And this month we launched service into Beverly and Danvers. We also see the Blue Bikes bike share program throughout the city. As you noted, we're looking to change the name of the department to the Department of Transportation. This is to better reflect the total scope of what we do work on. We see ourselves as helping to coordinate with a lot of the other departments, including electrical, building, police, planning, DPS, engineering, on projects that improve safety and accessibility for all users throughout the community. Some of the major projects and goals that we started working on or looking to continue to work on in the new fiscal year include developing a safety action plan. We received a federal grant to develop that plan. We do have a task force kickoff meeting that's scheduled for next Thursday, and we're developing a robust outreach plan to attend farmers markets, other community events, to have surveys, engage the public, get feedback. This plan will help us to seek out additional federal funds, potentially other state funds, to implement some of those road safety projects. We're also looking to finalize and implement the license plate recognition technology. I know I'll be back here tomorrow to talk about resident permit parking rates, as well as zones and additional removal of streets if the council so desires. We're also working on completing the fabrication and installation of several garage wayfinding signs throughout the city to help, especially during October, but these signs also afford us the ability to post additional information such as snow rates and things of that nature, so that work is underway as well. As you could see, just a few things to highlight. As far as staffing goes, we currently do have an enforcement vacancy. In discussions with the mayor, I'm looking to hold on to that vacancy while we still evaluate the need for it. We did get 2 vehicles during this current fiscal year, So we're able to cover more ground, do routes more frequently, and as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to implement the license plate recognition software, so hoping to evaluate whether or not that additional staff person will be needed. As far as the overall budget, for the most part, it's very similar to the previous fiscal year, I'd say with the exception of contracted services. A lot of this is we're looking to focus on covering the Blue Bikes operations costs. Other capital projects that we've started that we're hoping to finalize includes Jefferson and Wilson intersection, as well as the Ford Avenue project. As some of you know, with the transition that was going on with engineering and DPS, our department kind of stepped in to help project manage some of these projects just to keep them on track. Now that engineering has a roadways project manager back, we're trying to transition back to that and focus more on the neighborhood traffic calming tactical projects, as well as the parking policy programs that we've asked to work on. So happy to pause and answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. It's really impressive. As someone who takes the Skipper, I really appreciate that program, and also the EV charging parking spaces. I live near the Church Street ones. They seem very busy, so that's good to see. And I think it was interesting to hear about your safety action plan and outreach to the community. So yeah, you have a lot of great stuff going on, and it's appreciated. Plus all the traffic calming that has popped up everywhere. So let's see, questions. Councilor Mazzillo.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, David. Couple of questions. What you were just talking about, the safety, is that the Safe Streets Task Force that's talked about in here?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Who's on that task force?
Working with the consultant that we've brought on, their experience and who they've identified for other task force, and with input from the mayor, we have a lot of different department heads involved. We also have state legislatures or the reps that are involved. We have stakeholders. We have the hospital, the university. I've reached out to Councilor Hapworth to have someone from council participate as well. I have a full list, which I'm happy to share.
So ultimately, like, what do you want to get out of this task force, and where do you want this to go?
They'll be part of developing the safety action plan, providing input. It's very much data-driven. Kittleson Associates have been hired to look at the city's crash history, as well as the data that we've been collecting through the neighborhood traffic calming. We've been spending the last couple of weeks sort of uploading all that information to them so they could start digesting it and putting it into a plan to really develop outlines for projects, but also looking at policy, even evaluating our ordinance and making recommendations. So the task force will be providing input on that, and moving forward be involved, especially a lot of the department heads, on how projects get implemented. Because one of the things with us is we try to coordinate, as I noted with the other departments. We don't always be the ones to implement it. We might do one step, but then we try to hand it off to another department. So it's really trying to make sure we maintain that as these projects proceed.
So is this looking at it from like a wider lens as opposed to a traffic calming program where you're looking at, a limited street? Is it trying to look at it from more of a neighborhood point of view or a city point of view, or?
It's trying to look at corridors and intersections and evaluate and prioritize where measures can be implemented to address, sort of high crash rate areas, and help the city prioritize sort of what we do with the neighborhood traffic calming, but sort of on a bigger scale. We try to focus more on local streets. This will look at major arteries, collector roads, signalized intersections, things of that nature.
Okay, great. When are the flex posts going up on Wilson Street and Jackson Street?
We put the work order in to DPS and hoping they can get to it. I know they had some street sweeping signs that they had to put up, and so that's always the challenge is getting the bodies to implement the work.
Yeah, okay. Do you have any early data on the expansion of the Salem Skipper? It's been a couple weeks, right? So
I have some information. We actually broke some new records. We had a one-day record last week of 570 plus trips provided, and a new week, one full week record of over 3,100 trips. We're averaging now like 10,000 rides per month, and since the service launched, it's been over 260,000 rides.
So that high day, does that include the Danvers and Beverly expansion?
Yes.
So when you're looking at average rides, you've now got the expanded area that you're taking into account.
Correct. And VIA is going to be providing us soon with data specifically showing origin destination by community, so we can see where Salem residents are going to and from. So they're developing that. They're collecting the data. It's being able to allow us to then look at it ourselves through our own dashboard, so we could generate our own reports.
So are Beverly and Danvers advertising this service?
Yes.
On their municipal social media? And
they've indicated that. We have a joint press release, and tomorrow there's going to be an event at the Cummings Center that Congressman Moulton's office put together. I believe the mayor will be there as well. Some of the local delegates, Mayor Cahill, and I think representatives from Danvers as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councillor Cohen?
Thank you, Chair Merkel, not being a member of the committee, through you to Director Kucharski. I just want to follow up on something that Councilor Marcillo said. I had a meeting with a couple of Beverly councilors specific to their adopting the specialized code, and without asking them, they both said how excited they are about the skipper. And I think if it plays out and it can be expanded to other communities, it will be even more of a benefit for Salem residents. I have a couple of things. I just want to start out by saying I don't understand traffic calming, but I'm really a big fan of it. The complete streets concept is something that is something that I'm glad that we encourage here. The e-bikes expansion for the blue bikes, I just had a logistical question. Do we have the electricity? Is the charging done at the station, or is it done somewhere else?
They're currently battery powered, so they're balanced more frequently than the regular pedal bikes. Okay. There is discussion to develop docking stations that can charge those, but I believe that's a couple of years away, but we are having those discussions with Lyft now as a collective group.
I think that's great because people I know have e-bikes. It gives them an opportunity to go further and, places they wouldn't normally take their regular, pedal bikes. So I think that could be a big advantage here. I just want to compliment you on the coordination with Lieutenant Tucker and his department and DPS in getting, signs and other things up in a timely manner. Lafayette Street, Marblehead to West Ave. I know we've been talking about this. We've had some community meetings. I know Councilor Varela's in here, but I think we agree. I know you travel that every day, that there's a real need for us to do some significant calming. And I think the last we talked, it would be in stages. Do you know when we would be able to do another presentation to the community?
Tool Design, who was the consultant we've hired, they're developing more detailed plans for that first stage, which essentially would go from intersection with West Ave to Harborview Terrace. And when those are developed, I'll share those with you, Councilor, we can set something up and present with the commission.
Great. And I know you also we have to include Salem State because of their,
that's correct.
Their jurisdiction on their side. I just want to throw out this thought. I'm a big fan of what the skipper does. I do think that at some point, I have this vision of a free shuttle for residents, maybe not free for other people, but as an economic driver, and especially where, the MBTA has reduced their bus route into the point. So we actually have an area that has a very low ratio of cars per resident that has very little access to transportation. So just a thought that I'd love to talk about at some point.
Thank you, Councillor Stott.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to agree with Councillor Cohen's thought, especially with all of the data that we have now with the Skipper. We could, I would assume, look at it and see what popular routes are and times and come up with something, or eventually come up with something. But I think that would be a great next step. I had two questions on the department budget. The first one of the goals of completing the downtown parking study, I am always so curious about that. Can you provide a status of whatever happened to that?
It's still being finalized. Apologize for some of the delay when, again, we were shifting focus to help out with some of the engineering projects. We weren't able to give as much attention to that. But we've been working with Tom Daniel and Kate Newell-Smith to finish that, and we're hoping to get that finalized in the next month or so.
Okay, next month or something. And then my other question was about blue bikes. I circled the question. It looked like you were requesting more than what was approved. So I just was curious if there was going to be a reduction in service or docks, or if it's going to be level.
I'll let the finance director and
thank you.
Or if needed.
The city has been funding the Blue Bike operations on ARPA, and we calculated that we would be able to continue to fund 6 months until December of this year on ARPA. And so as part of our budget saving measures, half of that will be on ARPA and half of that. And then this 75,000 is incrementally phasing it onto the general fund for going forward. So the rest of that would need to come on for FY26.
Thank you. Councillor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair Merkel, through you to the Director of Traffic and Parking and the team. I just have a couple of questions. I noticed here that in overtime in 2024 was $1,750, and now this year's request has gone up to $45,000. Can you speak to that increase?
Would you mind giving me the number?
Sure. Sorry, 382 under overtime.
Oh, the increase in the overtime. So what we found is because we always need to have bodies at both garages now, when someone might be out for COVID or filling those hours, we're asking people to come in outside of their regular hours. So we've asked for that increase to cover for that coverage for not just the garage supervisors, but sometimes we'll have other staff in, and then also to cover the additional hours worked around October.
So is this reflective of what was spent in 2024, the actual cost?
We had to move some money around to put it in, so that is a close, but I'll let the mayor.
Yeah, so there was transfers, which is why the adjusted budget is so much higher for this current year than what had been adopted, and what's being requested for next year is closer to the actual amount that was spent or is historically spent on overtime, which is closer to $45,000 as opposed to $17,000.
Okay, thanks. Another question I have is with regards to the consultant fees of $75,000 being included in this year's budget, but not having previously been included. Can you speak to that as well? Is that because that we were just paying on an ad hoc basis, based project by project, and this year we're contracting for a full year?
The 14,812?
No, the under contracted services, consultants is $75,000. But was zero in 2024, 23, 24.
While Mr. Kucharski's locating that, the reason it looks like it wasn't included in prior years, the descriptor was much more general. And so this year we've attempted to break down what those costs are. And so I believe it's always included consultants, but it wasn't made explicit in prior budgets. But I believe Mr. Kucharski will have more information on that.
And has it been consistently around $75,000 for a number of years?
Dave, I believe that's how we calculated that under your contracted service.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's correct. It has been that way. We were trying to consolidate it. Sorry, I don't always look at this one when I'm doing the full analysis, but I think we were just trying to provide more breakdown of what it was, but it was part of a greater, as Anna said, was part of a greater total, but we're trying to show more where they're going.
Great. I'm always a fan of more transparency. How much did we actually spend on consultants under the department last year?
I'd say probably closer to 100,000 because we had raise. So
Was my guess. 75 felt low, given it's approximately 30 to 45 per project, basically.
we do use the traffic calming CIP. That's an annual. So we offset it with some of those funds as well.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. I also have been talking about an intercity shuttle for years and years, so just a third vote on supporting that. Thank you.
Councilor Masillo?
Thank you, Chair. Just two more things. Before we start talking about expanding the shuttle into more communities, we need to push back on the state to pick this up. If it's something that works, then it shouldn't be on Salem's shoulders to make it work. And I feel very strongly about that. I feel like we're getting data to prove that this needs to happen, but I am not in favor of expanding it just because more communities want us to do the work and support it. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I will say this again, and I've mentioned this several times to the mayor, I really think we need a plan for the paint and post projects to become a final solution with engineering, because when the paint and posts are there for years and years and have proven that they work, but the paint is faded, people are sick of looking at the flex posts. The flex posts aren't put up in time for the good weather, so it's not we don't have the traffic calming that we need, especially around the schools, which is where they're missing right now. We need the solution. It works. We need to make it happen. And I know it's money. I understand that, but we need to have some sort of a commitment that we're going to put money in the budget for these things because they work and they're permanent.
Thank you. I'd like to agree with Councilor Masillo. The only concern I had when we were going to spread into other cities and towns with the Skipper is if we're starting, a regional transit system, that Salem would end up, doing more of the work and providing more of the, financial support for it. And the state should certainly, pick up on that as well. So, yeah, I appreciate those concerns. Mayor Pingello?
So just to respond to both of those points, they're both great points. On the second one first, sure, why not? In agreement, I think we were on a call with the Mayor's Institute on Pedestrian Safety that I'm part of, and one of the things that was being expressed was a similar frustration around you create a pilot program somewhere, it seems to be working well, you want to make it permanent, but the perception where the next neighborhood that wants a pilot program is you've already made an investment in their neighborhood. When do we get our turnover here? So it is a question of resources. And I think one of the things we want to do for future capital years is really call out a separation between pilot programs and a separate funding source for permanent installation. So it's clear like we're doing both and we're not going to sacrifice one for the other. What that means in terms of our capital capacity to manage that is the question. Does it come from Chapter 90? Are we asking for more bonds, more bonding? Like, how are we going to manage it is the other question. On the first point, I agree. The other communities are, so this is largely being funded, the Skipper expansion pilot. This is a pilot just to limited areas of Beverly and Danvers. Places of high employment, shopping locations, education sites. It's being mostly funded through a congressional directed spending that Congressman Moulton secured for us. So it's not just coming from the city of Salem to pay for service that's going to Beverly and Danvers. It's being federally funded, and then there's a match that's being funded by all three communities to a certain extent based on ride origination. So everyone does have a little skin in the game, but absolutely in agreement that I think the longer term challenge that we're going to face is, this program, the core service is what, $1.3 million a year to run?
Correct.
About maybe $15, $16 a ride. We're charging $2 a ride. it was sustainable when we had the cannabis revenues to maintain it. It was sustainable when we had ARPA revenues to maintain it. It's sustainable with the federal funding in this earmark. None of these things are ongoing funding sources. And if we actually charged $15 a ride, people wouldn't ride it, and it wouldn't serve the goals of the program, which is to provide affordable transportation options. So, we applied for an MBT, a MassDOT innovation grant. We're going to keep looking for opportunities to drive some additional revenue to support the program going forward. It might take some local subsidy, but I think that we've identified a model that works. It fills a need that fixed route service and MBTA does not serve. We don't have an RTA, and we have a community that doesn't have as high rates of car ownership than some places. So I think it really fits the needs here well, and I hope the state would support it in some manner. We're going to keep trying for grant fundings, but ultimately, I think that some kind of model that does look at variable fares for non-residents, especially in peak travel times, is something that we want to put on the table. We've also had good conversations with employers. The reason you asked about marketing in those other towns and cities, a lot of that marketing is being done by employers who see this as a way for them to provide a transportation option for their workforce. So asking them, hey, after this pilot, coming center businesses, if you see a value in this, what is that value? Monetize it for us. So.
Yeah. I will just say that the time and management is through Salem, right? The time.
It's through VIA, but yeah.
Well, are you spending more time on it as we've expanded? Is your department spending more time?
There are times that we do, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that burden is still on Salem, right?
It absolutely is, yeah. And we do have the benefit of the core service. You can ride anywhere in Salem. Danvers and Beverly, they have very select areas where outside of that geofence, you can't get the skipper, so.
Thank you. Councilor Presnowski, did you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Merkel. Going back to the blue bikes, David, and maybe Anna, my understanding is that we're expanding that. We're having some more stations. Okay. That's good to hear, because my understanding is that we pay for the service, but we don't get any money back from any blue bikes, correct?
Correct.
And the reason for that, back when the blue bikes came in, is because there was no one else that had the program. We basically had to go with blue bikes because they were the only company out there that was willing to come in and do something for the city. Is that still the case, or is there competition now that COVID is done?
There are smaller companies that are out there. We had lost Zaxter. They were our previous rideshare, our local rideshare that we had, and they went away during the pandemic. One reason we found it appealing to go with blue bikes was because it was through the collective procurement through the MAPC. So this basically allows Salem residents, if you have a blue bikes membership, you could ride it in Salem and many other parts of the region where it exists. It also gives us some leverage negotiating with Lyft to bring e-bikes in and other things. And we're actually working with them, MAPC, and to petition MassDOT to help us more with funding those operation costs. So there are other companies, they're smaller, but the idea of working as a collective we found appealing. We didn't have to go through an RFP process, which is somewhat time consuming for staff to draw up that document and do interviews and review it. So that's not to say that at some point in time there might be something else out there, but right now we're happy with the relationship we have, and we like working with them.
And right now the ARPA is going to fund half of the year, Anna, is that correct? And we're going to be taking the rest of the responsibility. And how much is that?
75,000. So the total cost is 150,000. So split half between ARPA and half between the general fund.
Okay, Mayor, go ahead, I see you.
Yes, Mayor Pangallo.
Thanks. And just so there are no plans for the city to add any more stations to the network. I think we're at 18 now. So we feel like that's pretty sufficient coverage. That's not to say in the future there may not be private developments where the developer at their own expense wants to purchase a station and become part of the network. So if they're, for example, the Shetland Park project, we may want to encourage them to think about having at their own expense a blue bike station there for any residents that may be living there to have access to the system.
So the blue bike stations at Salem State College, Salem State pays for?
Salem State does pay for their station each year.
Okay, thank you. I know you talked earlier about a little bit of frustration about the signage, and I think all of the councilors will agree that sometimes, I know our DPW only has one person doing signs, and he's overwhelmed. He's trying to put up signs at the same time that making signs. I know that now the Department of Transportation is going to be kind of like in a reorganizational process. Is there any plans to help with the signage to get it up a little bit better, because we can't really do anything a lot of times until signs are made and put up, and sometimes that takes as long as up to 6 months to get a sign after something is passed. So do you have any plans on trying to make that a little bit better?
Nothing staffing wise, but we've actually been working with Mr. Joden, DPS, to help him develop a layout for permanent street sweeping signs. That's where a lot of the delay comes, because he has to put these things out and take them up. So Russell Finley in my office has been working to develop a full layout, give them exact numbers. Should it go on a utility pole? Should it go on a post? So we're providing that. And I believe Mr. Joden's going to start, part of his budget is asking for funds to start getting those signs fabricated, so that at least starting with the major corridors to free up some of DPS staff time with this.
So that's a great idea. Thank you for that. And the last thing, and I know I've spoken with Councilor Gerslow on this, what's happening with Ford Avenue? Where's that going?
So a lot of the sidewalk work has been completed. We do have some delays due to National Grid work that still has to happen. So we're having some discussions next week with engineering, again, who's sort of transitioning to take over the day-to-day operations or oversee the operations. So the hope is that we can get them out of there as soon as possible. Depending on the overall activity, they may proceed with milling in order to pave and stripe that area. So that is proceeding.
The armadillos are staying?
The armadillos are staying because that's not part of that project. That would be a future phase as another phase project. But the hope is to get that first intersection done and then have discussions with the mayor on which way do we want to head, continuing towards the Willows or...
The intersection looks great. The intersection into Winter Island and Columbus Ave, that looks terrific. It's just that when you're going down Ford Avenue, sometimes it doesn't make any sense. You're trying to figure out exactly what you're supposed to do if you're not, especially if you're not from this area. And I've actually seen vehicles traveling down the bike lane on the wrong side of the armadillos. I know there was talk at one time about actually extending the sidewalk out to the armadillos and putting a curbing right where the armadillos are, which is probably a great idea because that would narrow down the road and people wouldn't have that confusion. So I know it's been a few years and the armadillos are still there. They were supposed to be temporary, and just trying to figure out where's going to be the final phase and what's Ford Avenue going to look like.
I think this goes to what maybe Councilor Masilla was saying, where we've done these tactical projects and then we eventually have to get to a point where we'd like to make them permanent. We started with the intersection at Winter Island and Columbus because that's where we saw where a lot of the confusion was happening just with the striping. But the hope is to, as you said, make that a permanent, vertically separated bidirectional space, close up that free right that is no longer there by where Derby and Ford Ave meet, and do some improvements. But again, it's a longer term that requires survey, design, dealing with drainage. So,
thank you, David. I know you wear a lot of hats, and you're like a busy cook in a busy kitchen with a big menu. So, thank you for what you do and how you're putting it out. Thank you.
Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I just want to follow up on something Councillor Prosnewski brought up, and that's the signage. I totally agree. I think that moving to permanent signs for street sweeping is like incredibly important. I think we've all been in communities that have those signs, and people get used to it. They know when their vehicles need to be on the street or not. Just a example of why that's another example of why that's important is that National Grid did some tree work on Ocean Ave, and they put up signs that looked a lot like the street sweeping signs, and a lot of people in the neighborhood got upset. When are they doing mine? Whatever. I didn't get notice. And I think that way, when they see the orange signs, it won't be for street sweeping, it will be for a particular project. So I think moving to the permanent street sweeping signs is going to benefit the neighborhoods particularly.
Great. Any other questions on the budget before we move on to that vote? And then we'll go on to the capital improvement plan. Any other questions? Okay, so the budget summary is on page 381. Councillor Stott?
Thank you, Chair Merkel. I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Department of Transportation budget with a personnel line item of $1,174,099 and an expenditure line item of $521,035 for a Department of Transportation total of $1,695,134.
Second.
Thank you. So Councillor Stott moves to recommend approval of the personal budget for the Department of Transportation for $1,174,099 and the expenditures budget in the amount of $521,035 for a Department of Transportation total of $1,695,134. Seconded by Councillor Posnewski. All in favor? Okay, let the record show. I see 3 hands plus my own, so the matter carries 4-0. Okay, and last we have back in the CIP section 7 in the front on page, under transportation on page 260.
So if I'm looking at the same thing you are, there's, just to be sure, there's a few listed ARPA-funded projects. Was everyone seeing? Okay. The first is the Washington Street Sidewalk Extension. This is a project to create permanent sidewalks adjacent to the Ledger and Boston Burger spaces, essentially from Front Street to Essex Street. The engineering department had been working on those design plans. Again, we sort of picked those up and kept moving them forward. This is to create, again, enhanced sidewalk space, outdoor dining, as well as vertically separated bike lane. So if you're heading northbound on Washington, you'll be in the basic standard bike lane, and then you'll transition up to the curb for distance and then transition back. We did give a presentation to the commission during our last meeting. The slides on that and the plans are up on the city's transportation's webpage. The next is Washington at Essex fence installation. We've been working with the Salem Police Department as well as engineering to try to help with traffic and pedestrian control, especially during October. And there was a desire to put some type of fencing to control the access to that northern crosswalk. We're still working on the design, looking at the height, as well as whether or not the whole fence itself can be removed during certain times of year and just be in place during certain months. So their work is still underway. I mentioned earlier the wayfinding signs for the garage. That is proceeding. Restaurant Row sidewalk extension. There's a gap in the sidewalk network along Restaurant Row from Dead Horse Beach to the old, I think it's the Yacht Club parking lot. Again, we'll be working with the engineering department to come up with a way to extend the sidewalk and fill in that gap. As you know, we've done a lot of work out there, so this is intended to further enhance the pedestrian environment that's in the Willows. I mentioned the Jefferson-Wilson intersection. That work, as many of you know, is already underway. A lot of the sidewalk work's already completed. The last biggest piece of the puzzle is waiting on the signal equipment. We'll have a fully actuated signal in there. Unfortunately, as of 5 to 6 month delay, they've been ordered, and now we're just waiting for them to be delivered. In the interim, we have put in 2 PED-activated signals at the two crosswalks that are on Jefferson. So those are functioning. That also has National Grid work going on, so there's coordination there. And we're hoping to get them out as soon as possible so that we can finish milling and paving that. And like I said, eventually getting the intersection signal work in. We're also adding 3 additional streetlights to better illuminate it, working with Mr. Giardi on that effort. The next 4 items are the standard annual requests. These are similar amounts to last year. Bike infrastructure design, this helps us implement the bike master plan that the city has adopted, as well as any repairs that we might need on existing infrastructure that's in place, whether permanent or tactical, temporary. Asking for $50,000 for garage improvements for annual repairs and ADA compliance at both of the city garages. $150 for parking infrastructure improvements. This will look to work again with our sustainability department to add additional EV stations, but also to repave and make more compliant ADA parking spaces at some of our lots in the downtown area. And then $200,000 for traffic calming capital improvements, again, to implement projects, but to hire consultants to do design work, develop plans, do surveys, so we can continue that program. Then we have Essex at Cambridge crosswalk improvements, trying to coordinate efforts with the PEM in front of the Ropes Mansion to enhance the crosswalk that's currently there. It's a non-compliant ADA crosswalk. This would look to bump out the corners there, narrow the width of the crosswalk, and make it a lot safer for pedestrians. And the last 2 items, these are for current funding budgets. We have already budget in place to work with the sustainability department to improve the lighting systems at both of the city garages.
Great, thank you. Good to hear about the Ropes Mansion crosswalk as well. The hands went up at the same time, so I think I'll start with Councilor Hapworth.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. And Dave, thank you for, a lot of these investments, these are in places where a lot of people have identified it as issues. The Ropes Mansion as a major safety issue, Jefferson and Wilson is a huge safety issue. It's only $50,000, but $50,000 is insignificant. That the fence at Washington and Essex, we should be relying on pedestrians in some ways to tell us where to put our crosswalks. Pedestrians will go through the path of least resistance, and when we're putting up a fence somewhere, I think we're sending the wrong signal to the community about how we value our pedestrian infrastructure in Salem. It is the most visible spot in the entire city. It is the most visited spot. It sends a signal to the rest of the world about the way we do things here in Salem. And also, I don't know that there's data that supports, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong on that, but is there data that supports that this is an unsafe intersection other than just it being irritating for drivers? And I am a driver frequently in Salem, and I am irritated at that crosswalk when I can't get through it. I get it. But I don't know that I think that the goal of this department is always to make the roads safer for all. And I don't know that this is making anything safer for anybody. Through the lack of data, and then I think others have brought up the point that pedestrians could potentially find themselves, because they will go where they go, they could find themselves stuck in the intersection, attempting to cross somewhere, not realizing there's a fence up. So I just officially going on record that I do not support a fence in the center of Salem to keep pedestrians out.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair. I have similar feelings to Councilor Hapworth on this, but not exactly the same. I understand from the police that there are periods of times of the year where it does make sense to hone the space available to pedestrians to a smaller space to avoid additional jaywalking and increased traffic and pedestrian safety. But I agree with Councilor Hapworth in that is a very specific time of year, and those are I would even go so far as to say ad hoc decisions made by public safety in the moment. And so any kind of structure that is permanent, I am against. I like the idea that I heard you're investigating that it can be removed. I understand that this is in response to those plastic barriers that are often put up and that sometimes fall over and people jump and all of that. I've expressed concern with the design that the last design I saw, which maybe has already evolved, but I expressed concern to the mayor about the height, the visibility, the design, its permanence. A lot of these things, right? Children cross there, people who have multiple mobility, options, people in wheelchairs, bikes, people. I don't want someone to have to step out into a street to be seen, right? That's always a concern. So, just continuing the conversation there. I understand that there is a public safety aspect of this conversation that I respect, but I think that it is a small percentage of a full year, and I don't want to have to impact the downtown, our city year-round, our residents year-round for something, that is really needs temporary addressing. So that's all I'll say about that. I have another question with regards to the $200,000 a year for the traffic calming permanent installation, or how did you phrase it? Sorry.
Traffic calming capital improvements.
That's for permanent installations, or is that specifically?
It's intended for more of the design or tactical, as I call it.
Okay. So poles and paints and.
Coming up with a design plan for painting, hiring a contractor to paint, ordering additional speed humps or speed cushions, things of that nature, radar feedback.
Yeah. So this is no longer your problem. It's now the mayor's problem. So I noticed under engineering, there's no traffic calming permanent installation capital improvement line. And I know that the cost of permanent installations for traffic calming, to Councilor Marcella's point, is not small, and it takes engineering study. It takes, there's math and science and asphalt and all kinds of necessary time and resource investment. So where does that show up? Because as you have heard me say multiple times, and I know we discussed earlier tonight, we continue to just sort of fill the bucket with more water, and we're sort of overflowing and lack a permanent solution in a number of places.
So first, I'll come to Dave's defense on the fence. This was not like a traffic and parking or transportation parking department project. This was prompted at a request of the police for pedestrian control. We got your feedback around the height, the design, and the removability of the fence. So the idea that we would only have it there when we currently have the plastic fencing, which, as you pointed out, tends to end up and down Washington Street and present a hazard of itself. We do have data on crashes at that intersection. I'm happy to send that along to the council as well. In regards to the permanent installations, I think if you look in the engineering department, we have Chapter 90 and non-Chapter 90 funds for roadways. Those funds can be used for sidewalks, crosswalks, road paving, all kinds of anything involved in a roadway project. So we can direct it towards that. We have been without a roadway project manager for a year and a half, I think, maybe longer. And now that Giselle has started with us, we do have the opportunity to, I think, assess those things and prioritize them. This $200,000, to your point, is not going to fund those projects. And as I mentioned earlier, I think starting with future capital projects, we want to call out a specific line of funds. It may not be in the transportation department budget, it may be in the engineering department. Pilots would still live, trials would still live in traffic and parking because they'll do the studies. But when it comes to the actual asphalt, curbing, drainage. Drainage is some of the largest expense related to these things because we are changing the drainage in the street. That would live in the engineering department, and it would. I think there's still a conversation that we need to have internally about whether it would be generic like this and just say permanent installation of complete streets projects of traffic calming, or if it would call out specific projects by name. And I think open to feedback on that, but I think the flexibility of being able to say, hey, this project is ready to go. We have all the data we need, or this project is going to need another year. We want to hold off on it.
Yeah.
Gives us the ability to do that.
As I have said before, it is best that there be a sort of 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan for how to physically permanently install what we already have, right? It would be impossible to do all of it in 1 year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think when we look at a capital improvement budget, it's, you have the flexibility there to have a line item that's year over year over year for planning. I think that level of transparency would actually make the public feel really good, secure, patient, right? It builds a sense of trust in the program of itself, that there's going to be financial investment money set aside. I would highly encourage you calling it out. To Dave's, great credit, I think the department has done its best to sort of figure out how best to identify, manage, prioritize, generate designs, implement, pilot, communicate. This is an ongoing labor of love, honestly, for the department. I've seen it firsthand. I think that the program itself deserves that same level of attention cross-departmentally, because there are so many other departments involved. When it comes to installation, you've got the DPS, you've got engineering, you've got whoever else does the math. So let's start treating it like its own program, I would say, across department. I'd love to see that. Thanks.
And I'll just respond. I think the last part that we're waiting to kind of complete to have a full picture of that is the Safe Streets for All study. I mean, the work that working group's going to do, the consultant and the final plan, not only is it important to shaping what the future projects and priorities will be, as Dave pointed out, it unlocks additional federal funding on the construction side, because the grant we received was for planning. And when we complete the plan, that creates the opportunity for DOT funding for construction.
This will be my last comment, Chair. I appreciate your patience. Yeah, I just want to go on record as saying I know that what is allotted from Chapter 90 every year could be blown through on just sidewalks and streets in 6 months, right? If we were to, there's no way there's ever going to be enough in Chapter 90 to do what the DPS needs to do what engineering needs to do, and also address this. So anything, I'm happy to support, write letters, whatever you need. Thanks.
No, thank you for that. Councilor Rosillo.
Thank you, Chair. This is a great discussion, by the way. We probably should have done this a while ago, this whole getting from tactical to tactical to permanent. I would love to see this kind of a stage of the project visible on the website, so that we can send residents there to say, okay, you're in year 1 of your traffic calming. This is what we've done. We need a second year to reevaluate the data, to maybe move where the speed cushions are, whatever. At the end of 2 years, we're ready. We've got enough data. Proctor Street has proven that those speed humps work. We need a permanent installation, right? So now it's off your shoulders. You've proven it, right? Somehow we need to get money to design the permanent solution and then to install it. I mean, I think that would be really helpful. I think it would get some heat off of your department. You've done it. You've done your job. You've proven it. Same at Jackson Street and Broad Street, right? Like, that's working for the school. It's necessary for the school. We need a permanent solution. So that's that. I hate the fence. I hate the idea of the fence. I cannot tell you how much I hate that fence. It's not appropriate at a busy intersection like that. I know you're trying to solve a problem. You don't put up a fence. If I'm approaching that fence and I see a group of people, I'm in the street. I'm not going to enter a fenced area between a building and a fence with a clump of people that I don't know. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go in the street. So it's not going to solve the issue that you're trying to solve. We need a better solution. I don't care if it's temporary. We need a better solution there. Thank you. The $100,000 for the bicycle stuff, do you have a plan? Like, is there a plan from year to year on how you're going to spend that money, what areas you're going to address?
We go by the bike master plan.
Is it phased? Is the bike master plan phased?
It's more recommendations, and we've looked at certain areas. So we seem to be focusing on the major arteries. We're doing a portion of Lafayette. But again, for us, we're taking small bites, because we're not trying to do full-on corridor projects like Boston Street, per se, or Route 107. We're trying to, again, show that it can work by having floating parking lanes and maybe doing some small improvements at crosswalks, maybe have a floating crosswalk in conjunction. So again, trying to keep it at that level. We've done more work on the traffic calming. We seem to have gotten that down to a good science where we try out the temporary humps. A couple of years, we tweak their placement. Once we see where they're working, then we go into permanent. Still working on the bike master plan. Because I think there's a little more involved in that. And I think people like the humps. They don't always like the bike stuff, as you know, so that makes it more challenging.
So do you know how you are going to be spending the $100,000 this year?
Part of it will be going towards Lafayette Street, although we always try to seek grants to offset the cost. So we will be submitting a grant application to get some funding for that. Haven't been as focused, to be honest. One of the additional things we're looking to do with the safety action plan is to update our complete streets prioritization plan. So we've actually checked off a lot of those projects. And one of the things that Kittleson, the company we hired, has done in other communities as part of the safety action plan is to help them to develop a new prioritization plan. So again, that opens up the ability for us to apply for additional complete streets funding. So that'll be another aspect of this. Staff, we've sat down collectively with planning and engineering. We have some ideas, but we would open it up to the greater task force and incorporate that.
Okay, thank you. And I will just say I do appreciate the sidewalk extension on Restaurant Row. I was just there 2 days ago, and I was like, wait, everybody's in the street now because cars are up on the grass because there's no sidewalk. It was a mess. Like, it was just a mess. So thank you.
Councilor Prosnewski.
I like this new dirty word we've termed. It's called fence. Everybody pictures a chain link fence in the intersection and this ugly thing that's going up. It's not about a fence, and I don't like the word fence either. I don't like seeing a fence. The issue is public safety, and that crosswalk is a public safety hazard. We should be talking about the crosswalk, eliminating that crosswalk, but doing it aesthetically right and effectively to take that crosswalk. We have 3 crosswalks within 100 feet going in the same direction. We don't need that. Take it from my experience of directing traffic in that square many times. That 3rd crosswalk is a pedestrian hazard, the way it is, whether it's during October, which is the busiest time, summer weekends, which are also busy. Something has to be done about that. But I think that we're smart enough in this room and our staff to come up with some kind of a concept that looks good and keeps people off of that side of Essex Street. Years ago, there was no crosswalk there. When Essex Street was open, I know I'm going back a few years, there was a police box there, but there was no crosswalk over there. The crosswalk, the original one between Rockefellers and now the Samantha statue, that was there, but the other one was not there. There was a police box directing traffic. People have the option. They can go up the street and use the one right here in front of City Hall if they want to come across. But I think it's just important to redirect the people so that you don't have that double crossing, which causes a very, very big public safety concern. And take it from the guy that's been in the front lines. You know, it's very dangerous. Thank you.
Councilor Masillo.
Thank you. With all due respect, I understand the problem that's trying to be solved, but I don't think you understand a woman walking on a street at night, coming up to an enclosed space between a building and a fence with a bunch of people in the way. I'm sorry, you don't understand. Women, other people that don't feel comfortable walking through a huge group of people fenced in are going to go in the street.
I had Councilor Stott next, and then I'll get back. She had her hand up next.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Really quick, I'm going to change the topic for 1 second. The Museum Place Garage, I know we had a lot of multi-year funding for that with roof leaking and all of that. Is that still on your line as being expenditures, or are we all good there now, other than the minor improvements that you have noted?
So actually, in this current fiscal year, I've had money that I've not activated yet. We too are waiting to get a facilities director as well as an on-call design contractor to help. They help facilitate the last 2 phases of work. So we're hoping once those are on board, we can continue what we're calling phase 3, which would be the second and third levels of the Museum Place Garage, as well as do some additional work at South Harbor.
So is the phase 3 already funded? No, that will be
The phase 3 is we funded for a design to do an assessment, a full design of what will need to be done specifically, and then bid spec documents that need to go out.
Okay, so that will be a future ask.
Correct.
A few comments from me. Actually, another topic that we haven't talked about yet first, the wayfaring signs. Can you explain to me how those are different than the giant yellow signs we put up on North Street, Boston Street, and other streets to direct traffic where to go? Can't we program those when the lot is full, or is like why is there this cost? How will it be implemented? Where will they be used?
The wayfinding signs for the garage will tell motorists the capacity of each garage. It'll give a number. So it'll say that there's a certain amount left. And once it reaches a closure, it'll say full or closed. So you could have different signs rather than variable. There's a way an open API system that speaks from each garage, including the MBTA, to these signs that pushes the information out. We'd also be able to push out information if there was a snow event and we had snow rates at the garages. We can post that onto these devices. We have 6 locations that we're looking at throughout the city on all the major corridors. We're trying to capture people before they get into the downtown, especially in October, and direct them to the satellite lots that we oversee down at O'Keefe, at the high school, and the hospital lot. So that's the intent of that, is to better inform them before they get into the downtown that there are other options. So we'll have the variable message boards telling folks about the satellite lots, but also to reinforce it, say full, closed, however you want, we put it, help them with their decision making.
So that's interesting here. So 6 signs, and it'll be like a list, almost like a highway sign of the 5 different lots and what, if they're full or if there's space available.
It'll have the 3 garages. So it'll list it with an LDS screen next to it. And then it'll either indicate the number of spaces left, or it'll say closed or full. We haven't finalized that yet, but it'll name each of the garages.
And then is there room to direct to satellite lots when they're full?
On those, no. We would have the variable message boards, again, placed as they enter the corridor to let people know, but there's not enough room to do that. We could, there might be a way to get additional, but again, they're smaller screens, and it's not intended for people to be stopping to read them. It's just quick information.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm trying to picture them, and they also sound permanent, so they'll be there. They won't be like the screen that's in a parking spot on North Street in the fall.
Year-round.
So they'll be permanent installations. Okay, and that's interesting. A comment on the transparency with the traffic calming programs. I want to give the department a lot of credit for the data that is available for the traffic calming work that has been done, the studies that have been done. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but I get a call at least 3 times a week. How do I get speed bumps on my street? And I direct them to the prioritization data tool, and they go, wow. Like it's a lot of data. There are a lot of streets that need it. Understanding why they're not at the top of the list when they see that information. So if we could take that a step further, which I think we've said, and I've said before, of the ones that are in process, like the pilots and the next step or even just the applications. Because even myself, I'm like, who have you received an application from? Because I can't even remember. But that current website is really great if we could build off of that. Okay, back to the fence. I hate it. Yeah. I agree with basically everything that's been said. You know, even Councilor Parsonowski, because it's not the fence. It is the fence that I hate. I'll say that, but it's also the crosswalk. I hate that cross. Like, why are we jumping right to a solution? And I understand it's not you, but we seem to be jumping right to a solution, whereas we have a $75,000 line item for consultants to study our problem first. I think we should probably go that route versus jump to a solution that a lot of people here don't think is a great solution. It's not solving the problem. It's putting orange cones up, a nice fence that will probably make the situation worse. I agree that there shouldn't be two crosswalks right next to each other. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not a safe intersection. Something does need to be done, but I think we just need to put a little more thought into it versus just jumping into, oh, this is what the police think will help the situation, which, it might during the very busy seasons or very busy high traffic times. But honestly, if it's that busy that we're closing a fence, we should be shutting down the street. Cars should not be traveling down it. If it's that uncontrollable and hard to manage, cars should not be traveling down it. So that's my thought on that. I'll let the council continue.
Councilor Prosnowski.
Thank you. Just to add to that, I think the public understands now that this council is very concentrated on pedestrian safety and facilitating transportation and public safety and trying to make both roads meet together. And thank you, Councilor Stott, for the comments, because that's exactly what it is. It's not the fence, and that's the new dirty word. It's about the crosswalk. I know that in the last few years, probably about the last 10 years, we've used those metal barricades to direct people to the main crosswalk, which goes from the Samantha statue over to Rockefeller's, and it works. Nobody gets bogged down. We don't want to see a situation where people feel intimidated or feel danger or anything. It's a matter of directing people to cross the street on Essex Street, to cross the main crosswalk back over towards downtown. What we have done in the past, public safety-wise, has worked, and nobody feels intimidated, whether you're a man or a woman or a child. It works. It's just temporary, and it's ugly as sin. So if there was some way of doing it, and like Councilor Stott says, we have money for consultants, I believe that there could be something could be put in place where it would look nice and make sense. Thank you.
Councilor Stott, and then Councilor Cherslow.
Thank you, Chair Merkel. Just one more thing. I don't care how the fence looks. I don't care about the orange cones. I just don't think that there should be a blockade there. If we don't want someone using a crosswalk, there shouldn't be a crosswalk there.
Councilor Cherslow.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank Mr. Kucharski for all his work on Fort and Columbus Ave. He's been working with our neighborhood group for the last 4.5 years, and it's actually looking very nice, but he spent a lot of time, a lot of meetings, meeting us during COVID outside. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. But I just want to thank you and your whole team for all the work they've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, Chair. I debated saying anything more about the matter because I want this meeting to end, but I also think that perhaps there's an opportunity to have more conversation on the intersection in question on Washington and Essex. The reality is, people are going to cross there. They are coming off the pedestrian mall. Why there are two crosswalks there is because people are coming off the pedestrian mall and they are entering the street. That is why the second crosswalk was put in there. Nothing is going to change that behavior unless you close it. I do not want it closed, but I also do not want to see that second crosswalk disappear because it will just lead to more jaywalking. That is already happening no matter what, especially when there are large crowds, especially now we have a tour guide company right on the corner there. I think that those folks are going to handle their queues really, really well, but at the same time, we just had increased concentration there. So I just wanted to say there's been a lot of talk about there should only be one crosswalk. And the reality is we should probably make that entire intersection a table that is raised up and everyone can cross safely and be well seen. That's the solution in my mind, but I am not a professional. In fact, none of us here are traffic and parking design professionals, so it's important to give the team their space to do the work. Let me just close by saying again, I think what I hear us all saying is, regardless of what the solution will ultimately be, this ain't it, probably, and it needs more conversation, more research, more discussion. And I think as the Ward 2 counselor, it sounds like everyone here wants to be a part of that conversation. That's great, but I've really appreciated the communication as the downtown counselor, and I just wanted to close all of my comments tonight by commending the mayor. Actually, with this budget cycle, I have found there is increased transparency. Since his leadership, there has been increased communication, specifically with me in a way that I have never experienced before, so I'm super grateful to the increased attention to engagement, transparency, and communication for you and your administration. Please know that it is trickling down. I appreciate everyone's work. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other counselors? Okay, so I also want to say thank you and to our finance director and our deputy finance director for all the work that's gone onto this budget. And Mr. Kucharski, thank you, and your transportation department for everything. I mean, it's beyond a heavy lift what you do, and it is appreciated. And I also find you and your department really responsive and accessible and get clear answers on the questions. And I look forward to, this was an interesting conversation to me. I think it would be more helpful too as the conversation continues to have the police involved also, because obviously they had are part of this plan as well. So thank you all, and I'll entertain another motion. Motion to adjourn by Councillor Stott, seconded by Councillor Jerslow. All in favor? Great. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.